The scream, the late afternoon sun hung lazily over Riverside Elementary, spreading a soft golden hue over the playground that was alive with the laughter of children. Parents sat scattered across benches talking among themselves or scrolling through their phones, while keeping a half-watchful eye on their kids. Among them sat Emma Rodriguez, a young teacher who had just finished grading a stack of math worksheets. Her brown hair was tied in a neat ponytail, her dress simple but clean, the kind worn by women who balanced motherhood and work with quiet strength. Every few seconds her eyes drifted away from the papers to the playground, where her 5-year-old son Lucas was climbing the jungle gym. He was small for his age, but quick, imaginative, and endlessly curious. A boy who could turn a slide into a spaceship and the sandbox into a battlefield for plastic soldiers. The sound of children playing was comforting to Emma. It reminded her of normalcy, something she had spent years rebuilding after her world had collapsed. Lucas was her life, her reason for every early morning and every late night. She had promised herself that she would never let her child feel the loneliness she once felt. For the first time in years, things were starting to feel steady. Her job was stable, her apartment was cozy, and Lucas was happy. But life, as she had learned, had a cruel way of shattering peace when one least expected it. It happened in a second. A sharp, high-pitched scream sliced through the air like a blade, turning laughter into silence. Emma's head jerked up, her heart skipping a beat as her eyes frantically searched the playground. She saw Lucas at the top of the slide just moments before, but now the small figure at the bottom wasn't moving. Her breath caught in her throat as the world narrowed to that single horrifying sight. Her son lying still at the foot of the red slide, one arm twisted in an angle that looked wrong. So wrong. Her papers fluttered from her hands, forgotten as she bolted across the playground. The wood chips crunched under her sandals, her pulse roaring in her ears. The other parents were staring now, some rising to their feet, some gasping, but all too afraid to act. Emma didn't notice them. She dropped to her knees beside her son, her hands trembling as she brushed the hair from his forehead. "Lucas, baby, can you hear me?" she cried, her voice breaking with panic. His eyes fluttered open, filled with tears, and he whimpered softly. "Mommy, it hurts." Emma's eyes went to his arm and her stomach lurched. The forearm was bent at an unnatural angle. Even without medical training, she knew it was broken. She bit back a sob, forcing herself to stay calm. "Okay, sweetheart, don't move it, all right? Mommy's here. You're safe. You're going to be okay." She glanced around, desperate. "Someone call 911, she shouted. But a voice from behind answered immediately. "Emma, I'll drive you. My car's right here." It was Sophie Patterson, another mother from Lucas's class. Emma nodded in gratitude, scooping Lucas gently into her arms despite the pain that made him cry out. He was heavier than she remembered, but adrenaline lent her strength. She pressed him close, whispering soothingly into his hair as she ran toward Sophie's SUV. Every second mattered. Every sob from Lucas was like a knife in her chest. The drive to Riverside General Hospital was a blur of red lights and whispered prayers. Lucas had stopped screaming but whimpered softly, his face pale, his little hand clutching Emma's shirt. "It's okay, my love," she murmured, blinking away tears. "The doctors will fix you. You're so brave, my sweet boy. Just a little longer." She tried to sound calm, tried to sound like the mother who had it all under control. But inside she was unraveling. The smell of the hospital as it came into view hit her like a wave of memory. Antiseptic, metal, fear. And she felt her chest tighten. She hadn't stepped foot in this building since the night Lucas was born. Since that night, the night she swore never to relive. The automatic doors slid open with a hiss as Sophie parked in the emergency zone. Emma didn't wait. She ran inside, clutching Lucas. "My son fell, his arm out, he needs help," she gasped. The triage nurse, a woman with kind eyes and a calm authority, took one look at the child's arm and immediately called for assistance. Within minutes, they were led into a pediatric trauma room. A nurse helped Emma lay Lucas gently on the small examination bed. He looked so tiny against the white sheets, his eyes glazed with fear and pain. "It's going to be all right, Lucas," Emma whispered, squeezing his good hand. "You're going to get the best doctor here." The nurse smiled reassuringly. "The pediatric emergency doctor will be in very soon, ma'am. He's one of the best we have." Emma nodded absently, brushing away a tear. She prayed silently for time to move faster. When the curtain finally pulled back, Emma looked up, and her heart stopped. The man standing there wasn't just any doctor. He was a ghost from a life she thought was gone forever. Dr. Nathan Hayes. He froze mid-step, the clipboard slipping from his hand and hitting the floor with a dull clatter. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The years dissolved in an instant, replaced by a rush of memories. Laughter under starlight, whispered promises in dorm hallways, and the night everything had fallen apart. He looked older now, more grounded, the boyish charm replaced by quiet confidence. His hair was shorter, dark, and neatly combed, but his eyes, those sharp, clear green eyes, were exactly the same. "Emma," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. She felt every nerve in her body tighten. "Hello, Nathan," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. Lucas blinked between them, confused by the strange tension in the room. "Mommy, is this the doctor?" Nathan's gaze dropped to the boy and Emma saw it, the instant recognition that flashed in his eyes. Lucas's face, the same shade of hazel eyes, the same dimple that appeared when he pouted. It was like looking at a reflection of his own childhood photos. Nathan swallowed hard, his voice caught in his throat. Yes, I'm Dr. Hayes. I'll be taking care of you, buddy." He moved closer to the bed, slipping automatically into his professional mode, though Emma could see the storm brewing beneath his calm. "So, Lucas," he said gently, "can you tell me what happened?" The little boy sniffled. "I was saving the world," he said weakly, "and then the slide attacked me." Despite everything, Nathan chuckled softly. "Ah, I see. That's a tough mission. We'll get you fixed up so you can keep saving the world, okay?" Emma stood back watching him work. She had forgotten how effortlessly kind he was with children, how his voice softened when he spoke to them. Watching him now was like looking through time. The boy who once dreamed of becoming a doctor had become one. And yet all she could think was how much she had hidden from him. After examining Lucas's arm, Nathan's tone grew serious but calm. "I think it's a fracture, a clean one, hopefully. We'll get an X-ray to confirm and then set it properly." Lucas's lip quivered. "Will it hurt?" "Just a little, but I'll be right here with you," Nathan promised, his hand steady and reassuring. "You're a strong kid, I can tell." When the nurse came to take Lucas for imaging, Emma rose to follow, but Nathan touched her arm gently. The contact was electric, familiar yet foreign, like a forgotten song suddenly remembered. "Emma," he said quietly, "can we talk?" "Just for a minute." She hesitated, torn between wanting to run and needing to breathe. Finally, she nodded. "Okay." As the nurse led Lucas out, Emma and Nathan stood in the empty room surrounded by the hum of monitors and the faint scent of antiseptic. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair, the same nervous gesture she remembered from their college days. "I can't believe it's you," he said softly. "I never thought I'd see you again." Emma looked away. "Life has a strange sense of humor," she murmured. His eyes lingered on her face, tracing the changes time had carved, the faint lines of exhaustion, the quiet resilience. "You look good," he said, his voice thick with emotion he didn't want to show. She gave a small, polite smile. "So do you. You became what you always wanted to be." "And you?" he asked gently. "I became a mother," she replied simply. That silenced him. The unspoken truth hung between them like static. When Lucas returned, clutching his teddy bear, Nathan switched back into doctor mode. The X-rays confirmed a clean break in 2 places. "Good news," he said, crouching to meet the boy's eyes. "It looks painful, but it'll heal perfectly. You'll have a cool cast. Wow, what color do you want?" "Blue, like Captain America." Nathan grinned. "Blue it is." As he carefully wrapped the bright blue cast, he told Lucas funny stories about other kids who'd broken their arms doing hero missions. The boy giggled, his earlier fear fading away. Emma watched the two of them together, the doctor and the boy who didn't know he was looking at his father. Her chest tightened painfully. The connection between them was undeniable, and she knew Nathan could see it too. When the cast was done, Nathan gave final instructions about care and follow-up. Then he handed Emma a small card. His handwriting on the back read, "Call me if you need anything, day or night." She took it wordlessly, their fingers brushing. The warmth lingered even after she pulled away. "You did great, Lucas," Nathan said as the boy proudly showed off his new cast. "You're officially a superhero again." Lucas smiled. "Thanks, Dr. Hayes." "You're cool." Nathan's smile faltered just a little as his eyes met Emma's again. "He's an amazing kid," he said quietly. "You've done a wonderful job, Emma." She wanted to thank him, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she nodded and guided Lucas toward the exit. The boy waved enthusiastically. "Bye, Doctor." "Bye, Lucas," Nathan replied softly, his eyes never leaving Emma. As she walked through the hospital doors into the fading sunlight, Emma felt her heart pounding in her chest. The world looked the same, but she knew everything had just changed. She had kept a secret for nearly 6 years, a secret she thought would never come to light. But fate had brought Nathan back, and his eyes had already asked the question she'd feared for years. When her phone buzzed 3 days later, she didn't need to check who it was. The message read simply, "We need to talk. He deserves to know." Emma sat frozen, staring at the words, knowing the truth she'd buried for years was about to surface. She looked at Lucas playing on the living room floor with his toy cars, his blue cast covered in doodles and stickers. The world she had built so carefully was trembling again, and she didn't know if it would survive the storm that was coming. But deep inside, beneath the fear, was something she hadn't felt in years, a fragile spark of hope. Because maybe, just maybe, some things were meant to find their way back. The confrontation, 3 days had passed since the hospital visit, but for Emma Rodriguez, time had become an uneven rhythm of silence and heartbeat. The world outside her apartment carried on as usual. Cars rolled past, children played, and the city lights flickered awake each evening. Yet everything around her felt slightly offbeat, as if she were watching life from behind a glass wall. Her son Lucas was healing well, his bright blue cast already covered in stickers and colorful scribbles from his classmates. He was back to smiling, watching cartoons and laughing at silly jokes, completely unaware of the storm swirling in his mother's heart. But Emma couldn't find peace. Every time she looked at his small face, the resemblance she had once tried so hard to ignore seemed louder, undeniable, almost shouting the truth she had buried for years. He looked like Nathan. When her phone buzzed that morning and she saw Nathan Hayes' name on the screen, her breath caught in her throat. His message was simple but heavy. "We need to talk. He deserves to know." The words lingered in her mind long after she put the phone down. She had known this moment was coming since the day she walked into that ER, since she saw the shock in Nathan's eyes when he looked at Lucas. He was a brilliant man, observant, intuitive, and incapable of ignoring the obvious. Still, she wasn't ready. She wasn't ready to explain why she'd disappeared, why she'd raised their son alone, why she hadn't told him. The past was a wound she'd carefully wrapped and hidden, and now he wanted to pull the bandage away. Her best friend Maria knocked at the door just as Emma was sitting at the table, staring blankly into her cold coffee. Maria had been her rock through every trial, through the pregnancy, the loneliness, the fear, and the endless balancing act of motherhood. She walked in without waiting for an invitation, holding 2 cups of hot lattes and a bag of pastries. "You look awful," Maria said with her usual blunt honesty, dropping the bag on the counter. "You didn't sleep again, did you?" Emma sighed, rubbing her temples. "He texted me." Maria didn't need to ask who. "Nathan?" Emma nodded. "He wants to talk. He said Lucas deserves the truth." Maria set down her coffee and leaned against the counter, studying her friend carefully. "Well, he's not wrong, you know." "I know," Emma whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "But I'm terrified, Maria. What if he hates me for keeping it from him? What if he tries to take Lucas away? Or what if he doesn't care at all?" Maria shook her head gently. "You've been living with this weight for 6 years. You owe it to yourself to stop running. And if Nathan truly is the man you once loved, and if he's half the person you said he was, he deserves the truth. And Lucas deserves his father." The word father felt foreign and sharp on Emma's ears. She had spent years trying to protect Lucas from disappointment, from heartbreak, from the instability she had known too well growing up. "I did what I thought was right," she said quietly, staring into her cup. He had just started his medical residency back then. He was buried in work, moving to another city. We were already fighting about time, about priorities, about what came first, me or medicine. And when I found out I was pregnant, he had just been offered a fellowship abroad. He told me he couldn't stay, that his dream was finally coming true. So I let him go." Her voice trembled. "I couldn't be the reason he gave it all up." Maria's tone softened. "Emma, love doesn't mean sacrifice in silence. You both lost something precious because you didn't trust each other with the truth." Emma looked up, her eyes glassy. "I just wanted to protect my son. And maybe now it's time to protect him with the truth," Maria said gently, placing a hand over Emma's. "Meet him. Face it, you can't carry this forever." By evening, Emma found herself standing outside Riverside Cafe, the small corner coffee shop where she and Nathan had once spent countless hours during college, studying, laughing, dreaming about futures that had once included each other. The familiar scent of roasted beans and the quiet hum of acoustic music triggered an ache deep in her chest. The neon sign flickered above her head, and through the window she could see him already sitting inside. Nathan was still in his hospital scrubs, the stethoscope hanging loosely around his neck. He looked tired, but when he noticed her through the glass, he straightened immediately, his eyes locking onto hers with a mix of apprehension and longing. She hesitated for a heartbeat, her hand on the door handle, fighting the impulse to turn around and flee, but she didn't. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. "Emma," he said softly as she approached the table. His voice carried the same warmth, though time had etched more gravity into it. "Nathan," she replied, sitting down opposite him. For a moment neither spoke. The air between them was thick with 6 years of unsaid words. The cafe was quiet except for the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. Nathan finally broke the silence. "You look exactly the same," she smiled faintly. "You don't. You look tired," he chuckled dryly. "Occupational hazard." He leaned forward, his tone shifting. "Emma, I'm not going to pretend this isn't strange. When I saw you in that ER, it felt like the ground disappeared. I didn't even know you were back in Riverside. And then," his voice faltered as he searched her face. "Then I saw him. I saw Lucas." Emma's heart began to pound. She opened her mouth, but he raised a hand gently. "You don't need to say it." "I know, Emma. I knew the second I looked at him." His voice was quiet, almost trembling. "He's mine, isn't he?" The words hung there like a weight she could no longer hold. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. "Yes, Nathan. He's your son." Nathan leaned back, running a hand through his hair as if trying to process years of lost time. His jaw tightened, his breath uneven. 6 years, he whispered. "You've kept this from me for 6 years." "I know," Emma said quickly, her voice breaking. "And I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing. You had just started your residency. You were already so overwhelmed, and I didn't want to be the reason you gave up your dream." Nathan's eyes flashed with a mix of pain and disbelief. "You think I wouldn't have wanted to know? You think I wouldn't have chosen him? Emma, you didn't even give me the chance to decide." She looked down, unable to meet his eyes. "I was scared. You were so determined to leave. I thought you'd resent me, that you'd see me as the obstacle standing in the way of everything you worked for." He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "I left because I thought we had time. Because you said you'd wait. If I'd known I was leaving behind my son." His voice cracked and he stopped, pressing his lips together. The silence that followed was heavy and raw. The cafe's background chatter seemed to fade until all Emma could hear was the faint ticking of the wall clock. Finally she spoke, her voice trembling but steady. "You're right. You deserved to know. But I wasn't ready then. I was young, scared, alone. My parents had disowned me when they found out. I had no one except Maria. I wanted to tell you so many times, but every message I wrote ended with me deleting it. I didn't want to destroy your future." Nathan's anger softened, replaced by a deep sadness. "Emma, you didn't destroy my future. You were my future." Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent and uncontrollable. "I didn't know how to fix it, Nathan. By the time I finally found the courage, it felt too late. You were gone and I didn't even know where to find you." He leaned forward again, his voice gentler now. "You don't have to fix the past, but we can fix what's next. I just want to be part of his life. I want to know him, Emma." Her throat tightened. "He doesn't know anything. He thinks his father died before he was born. That's the story I told him, that his dad was a kind, brave man who couldn't stay. I didn't want him to feel abandoned." Nathan's eyes filled with emotion. "You made me a ghost in his life." Her lips trembled. "It wasn't meant to punish you. It was meant to protect him." He nodded slowly, taking a deep breath as if fighting against the tide of emotion inside him. "So what now?" he asked quietly. "Do you plan to keep me out forever? Or do I finally get to meet my son for who I really am?" Emma's hands twisted together nervously on the table. I don't know how to tell him. I don't want to confuse him, Nathan. He's just a child. As she drove away, her mind was a storm of emotions. Fear, relief, guilt, and something dangerously close to happiness. For the first time in years, the possibility of healing didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a door she might actually open. That night, after tucking Lucas into bed, she sat by his side, brushing his hair gently as he slept. His small hand rested on the pillow, the blue cast gleaming faintly in the lamplight. Emma whispered quietly, "You're going to meet someone soon, my love. Someone who should have been here all along." She didn't know what the future would bring, whether forgiveness, chaos, or something in between. But she knew one thing for certain: the truth, no matter how painful, was always the beginning of healing. And somewhere across the quiet town, Nathan sat awake in his apartment, staring at a photograph of himself from medical school. The one Emma had once taken, the one where he was laughing under the spring sunlight. He turned it over, and for the first time in years he allowed himself to hope again. Because tomorrow he wouldn't just be a doctor. He would be a father. The revelation. The next morning dawned with a soft drizzle that painted the streets of Riverside in silver. The world outside Emma's small apartment looked freshly washed, as if the sky itself had decided to start anew. For Emma Rodriguez, however, the morning brought no such peace. Her nerves fluttered in her chest like restless birds as she packed Lucas's small backpack for school. He was sitting at the table, swinging his legs, humming an off-key tune and proudly showing off the doodles his classmates had added to his blue cast. The sight should have filled Emma with warmth, but today every smile, every innocent question seemed to press against the walls of her secret. She poured milk into a bowl of cereal, trying to steady her shaking hands. Nathan's message from the night before still echoed in her mind. "I'll stop by after work tomorrow. Maybe I can meet him." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of 6 years of silence. It wasn't just a meeting. It was the beginning of truth breaking through years of fear and guilt. As she watched Lucas eat, her chest tightened with emotion. He looked so peaceful, so happy, so unaware that his life was about to change forever. She had spent so long creating a world that protected him from pain, from questions she couldn't answer, but now that world was about to crack open. She wondered if he would be angry, confused, or simply curious. She wondered if Nathan was truly ready for what fatherhood meant, not the abstract dream of it, but the reality of a small boy who would look up to him and expect the world. By the time afternoon arrived, the rain had cleared and the air felt thick with humidity. Emma paced the living room, her heart pounding with every glance at the clock. Lucas was sitting on the carpet building towers out of Legos, occasionally glancing up at his mother with a puzzled expression. "Mommy, are you okay? You keep walking like a robot," he said with a giggle. She forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking." "About what?" She hesitated, then knelt beside him, brushing a curl from his forehead. "About someone I want you to meet today." "Who?" he asked eagerly. "Remember Dr. Hayes from the hospital? The one who fixed your arm?" Lucas's face lit up instantly. "Yeah, he gave me stickers. Is he coming?" Emma nodded slowly. "Yes, he's coming. He's a very special person." Lucas's excitement made her heart ache even more. "Can I show him my drawings?" he asked. "Of course, baby. I think he'd love that." The knock came at exactly 5:30 p.m. Emma's pulse quickened as she opened the door. Nathan stood there in casual clothes, jeans, a gray sweater, and that same familiar expression of calm mixed with nervous anticipation. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the unspoken tension thick in the air. Then Nathan smiled softly. "Hi." "Hi," Emma replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She stepped aside to let him in. As soon as Lucas saw him, he jumped up. "Dr. Hayes," he cried, running forward, his little blue cast waving in the air. "Look, it's all better now." Nathan knelt to his level, his face lighting up with genuine warmth. "Hey, buddy. That's the best superhero cast I've ever seen. You took good care of it." Lucas nodded proudly. "I didn't even cry when it hurt. Mommy says I was brave." "She's right," Nathan said, glancing up at Emma. "You're a brave boy, and you've got a pretty amazing mom." Emma's eyes softened. The sight of the two of them together, the man she once loved and the child they created, filled her with a strange mixture of peace and pain. It felt natural, as if they had always belonged in the same room. For the next hour, the atmosphere eased. Lucas eagerly showed Nathan his toys, his books, his art projects. Nathan listened attentively, laughing at his stories, asking questions, helping him build a Lego spaceship. Emma watched quietly from the kitchen, preparing snacks she barely touched. She noticed how easily Nathan connected with Lucas, not in a forced or awkward way, but with the natural instinct of someone who had always known how to listen. At one point, Lucas handed Nathan a crayon drawing of a stick figure family, a small boy, a mother, and what appeared to be a superhero with a cape. "That's me and Mommy," Lucas explained proudly, "and that's my hero." Nathan looked at the picture for a long moment before asking gently, "Your hero?" Lucas nodded. "Mommy says heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they help people, like you do." Nathan's throat tightened. He smiled faintly and said, "Your mom is right. She's the smartest person I know." Later, after Lucas had gone to his room to watch cartoons, Emma poured 2 cups of coffee and joined Nathan on the couch. The silence between them was no longer hostile, but fragile. "He's incredible," Nathan said softly, staring at the floor. "You did such a good job, Emma. He's bright, kind, confident. Everything a kid should be." Emma swallowed hard. "I tried. It wasn't easy, but he made it worth it." Nathan turned to her, his expression serious but gentle. "I don't want to make things complicated. I don't want to take him from you or confuse him, but I want to be there, and however you'll let me. I missed his first steps, his first words, his first birthday. I can't change that, but I can be here now." Emma looked down at her hands, her heart heavy. "He's never asked about his father much. The story I told him, it was simple. I didn't want him to feel abandoned or unwanted. I just said his father was someone who had to go far away, someone good who helped people." Nathan's voice softened. "You weren't wrong." For a moment their eyes met, and something deep and unspoken passed between them. A mix of forgiveness, regret, and something that still lingered after all these years. Then, from the hallway, Lucas's small voice called out, "Mommy, can Dr. Hayes come again tomorrow?" Nathan smiled despite himself. "That depends on your mom," he said. Emma felt her chest tighten, but this time the ache was not fear. It was the painful beauty of hope. "We'll see," she said softly, hiding the tremor in her voice. After Nathan left that evening, Emma sat on the couch in silence. The apartment felt strangely different now, warmer, lighter. Lucas soon climbed onto her lap, yawning. "I like him, Mommy. He's nice." Emma smiled, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "Yes, sweetheart." "He is. Is he your friend?" Lucas asked sleepily. Emma hesitated for a long time before answering. "Yes," she whispered. "He's an old friend." Lucas nodded drowsily. "He should come again. I want to show him my drawings." Moments later, he drifted to sleep in her arms, his tiny fingers curled around hers. That night, after putting him to bed, Emma stood by the window staring at the city lights. She thought about Nathan's face when he looked at Lucas. The quiet awe, the sadness, the joy. It was the same look she had seen when he first held a newborn patient in medical school, that deep reverence for life. Only now it wasn't just any life, it was his own son. Over the next few weeks, Nathan began visiting regularly. Sometimes he joined them for dinner. Sometimes he took Lucas for ice cream or to the park. Their connection grew effortlessly, as if they were making up for lost years. Lucas adored him, not yet knowing the full truth, only that this kind doctor seemed to understand him better than most adults did. He began asking questions about Nathan's work, his childhood, his favorite superhero. Nathan answered each one with patience and humor, always ending with, "Maybe one day I'll tell you a really special story." One Saturday afternoon, they went to the park together, the same park where everything had begun. Lucas was laughing as he ran ahead with a kite, and Nathan and Emma followed slowly behind. The air was crisp, the sky clear, and for a fleeting moment everything felt simple again. Nathan looked at Emma and said quietly, "Do you ever think about what might have been if things had gone differently?" She gave a wistful smile. "All the time. I used to imagine you sitting beside me during med school finals, cheering me on. And later, when I'd come home after long shifts, I'd picture you there telling me it was worth it. But I never imagined—" He trailed off, watching Lucas run in circles, his laughter echoing. "I never imagined I already had everything I wanted waiting for me back here." Emma looked away, her eyes glistening. We can't change the past, Nathan. No, he agreed softly, but we can decide what to do with the time we have now. That evening, as they sat on a park bench watching the sunset, Nathan took a deep breath. Emma, I think he should know the truth. Maybe not all of it at once, but at least enough to understand that I'm not just his doctor. The healing. The days that followed the revelation felt strangely quiet for Emma Rodriguez, like the calm that lingers after a powerful storm. The truth had finally been spoken, and while it had shaken the world she built for 6 years, it also brought a peace she hadn't known in a very long time. The secret that had once sat like a stone on her chest was gone, and though her heart was still tender, it finally felt lighter. But with truth came change, and change, no matter how welcome, always carried a weight of its own. Lucas had taken the news with a simplicity that only a child could possess. He didn't question the years that had passed or the reasons that had kept his father away. His world was still pure, unburdened by bitterness. To him, Nathan wasn't a stranger returning from the shadows. He was simply Dad and the same man who had made him laugh in the hospital and helped him build spaceships out of Legos. Emma had spent years worrying that the truth would wound him, but instead it seemed to fill a gap in his heart she hadn't even realized was there. Still, as she watched them grow closer day by day, a quiet unease crept through her. Not fear exactly, but uncertainty. For 6 years she had been everything for her son, mother, provider, protector. Now she was learning how to share that role. Nathan, for his part, embraced fatherhood with a devotion that astonished even himself. He rearranged his work schedule to spend more time with Lucas, volunteering for day shifts instead of nights, taking shorter breaks just so he could leave the hospital early enough to read bedtime stories. Emma found herself watching him with cautious admiration. The way he learned Lucas's favorite foods, how he remembered every detail of his little stories, how he patiently taught him to ride his bike in the park every Saturday morning. He wasn't trying to make up for lost time in grand gestures, he was simply present, consistently and wholeheartedly, and that mattered more than anything. One evening, about 2 months after their first honest conversation, Emma sat at the kitchen table grading papers while Lucas and Nathan worked on a puzzle nearby. The apartment was filled with the soft hum of conversation, Lucas's giggles, Nathan's calm voice, and the occasional sound of a piece snapping into place. It was an ordinary evening, yet it felt extraordinary because of its warmth. When Nathan looked up and caught her watching, he smiled, and she quickly turned her gaze back to her papers, pretending to be busy. But her heart betrayed her, racing in that old familiar rhythm she had buried years ago. After Lucas went to bed, Nathan lingered in the living room, finishing his coffee while Emma quietly cleaned the table. He's getting better at puzzles, Nathan said, his voice low. Emma nodded, not looking up. He takes after you. You were always good at figuring things out. He chuckled softly, except when it came to people. That made her pause. She looked up, meeting his eyes. There was no accusation there, only quiet honesty. We were young, Nathan, she said softly. And scared. He nodded slowly. I know, but I don't want to keep looking back at what we lost. I'd rather look at what we have now. The words hung in the air, gentle yet heavy. Emma turned back to the counter, her fingers tightening around a dishcloth. You make it sound so easy. It's not, Nathan said, his tone earnest. But I've learned something, Emma. Life doesn't hand you perfect moments. You have to build them. One piece at a time. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain started tapping softly against the windows, and the quiet rhythm filled the silence between them. Then, unexpectedly, Emma said, I'm still learning how to trust again. Not just you, people in general. Life in general. Nathan stepped closer but didn't touch her. His voice was gentle when he replied, Then let me help you learn. It was such a simple offer, yet it hit her harder than any grand declaration could. She turned, meeting his gaze again, and for the first time since their painful past, she saw not the man who had left her, but the man who had come back and stayed. She gave a small, trembling smile. You already are. The following weeks became a delicate dance of rediscovery. Nathan's presence in their lives became steady. Dinners, school pickups, weekend walks. He started helping Lucas with his homework, teaching him small lessons about science and kindness, and each evening that ended with laughter made the apartment feel more like a home. Sometimes Emma would find herself smiling without realizing it, her heart softening as she watched them together. But then the doubt would whisper, what if it doesn't last? What if he leaves again? She tried to bury those thoughts, but some wounds heal slower than others. One Friday afternoon, Lucas came home from school clutching a small paper invitation. "Mommy, Daddy, there's a family day at school next week. We get to bring both our parents," he said excitedly, jumping up and down. Emma froze at the word both. For years she had attended every school event alone, sitting quietly while other children showed up with two parents. Now the thought of standing beside Nathan, of facing curious teachers and other parents, made her chest tighten with both pride and fear. But when she saw the joy on Lucas's face, she couldn't refuse. "Of course, sweetheart," she said softly, smiling. "We'll both be there." Nathan's smile mirrored hers. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The week leading up to Family Day was filled with anticipation. Emma found herself worrying about everything. What to wear, what people would say, whether Lucas would feel overwhelmed. She reminded herself that none of that mattered. What mattered was that her son finally had both his parents by his side. When the day arrived, the school gymnasium was buzzing with noise, music, laughter, the chaos of children dragging their parents to tables covered with glue and glitter. Emma felt a rush of nostalgia and anxiety as they entered, Nathan walking beside her, Lucas proudly holding both their hands. She caught sight of other parents glancing at them, whispering politely curious things. But then Lucas tugged at her sleeve, beaming. "Mommy, Daddy, come see. We're making family trees." They sat together at a small table, Lucas in the middle, coloring furiously. He drew himself in the center of the paper, then Emma on one side and Nathan on the other, linking them all with bright red hearts. Emma blinked back tears as Nathan leaned over, his arm brushing hers. He whispered quietly, "That's the best family tree I've ever seen." For the rest of the afternoon, the three of them laughed and played as if the past had never existed. They participated in games, shared snacks, and at one point, when Lucas ran ahead, Emma found herself standing alone with Nathan near the exit. "You know," she said softly, "seeing him this happy makes everything worth it." Nathan nodded. "He's our reminder that we did something right, even when everything else went wrong." Their eyes met, and for a fleeting second the distance between them disappeared. The noise of the gym faded away, leaving only the quiet hum of understanding. As the months passed, their small routines began to settle into something that resembled a family. Nathan moved into a nearby apartment so he could be closer to Lucas, and slowly, naturally, the three of them became a team. They cooked together, celebrated small milestones, and on Sundays, they made it a tradition to have dinner together. Emma's homemade lasagna, Lucas's favorite. But even as happiness began to return, life, as always, found ways to test them. One night, Nathan called Emma late, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "There was an accident on the highway," he said quietly. "A child didn't make it." Emma felt her heart twist. "Nathan, I'm so sorry." He sighed, the weariness in his tone unmistakable. "I keep wondering if I could have done more. It doesn't matter how many lives I save, the ones I lose stay with me." Without thinking, Emma whispered, "Come over." He hesitated. "It's late, I know, but you shouldn't be alone right now." When he arrived, he looked broken in a way she hadn't seen before, not physically, but emotionally, the weight of his work pressing down on him. Emma made him tea, and they sat in silence for a long time. Eventually, he spoke softly. "You were always the one who could calm me down. I used to tell myself I didn't need anyone, but the truth is I always needed you." Emma looked at him, her eyes shimmering. Maybe we both needed to lose each other to understand what that really meant. Nathan reached across the table, his hand finding hers. There was no rush, no grand confession, just a quiet connection that spoke louder than words. For the first time in years, Emma didn't pull away. That night, as he left, he paused at the door and turned back to her. "Emma," he said softly, "you don't have to forgive me all at once, but don't shut me out again. I'm here now and I'm not leaving." She nodded slowly. "I know." The next morning, the sunlight poured through the window, and Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. The fear that had once defined her life was fading, replaced by the fragile beginnings of trust. Lucas woke up early, climbing into her bed, chattering about pancakes and cartoons, and for the first time, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe they were truly healing, not just as individuals, but as a family. The new beginning spring returned to Riverside with the kind of gentle beauty that always made Emma Rodriguez stop for a moment and breathe. The trees outside her apartment window were dressed in soft green again. Children were playing on the sidewalks after months of gray skies, and sunlight spilled through her curtains like a promise that life always found a way to bloom again. 6 months had passed since the day she finally told Lucas the truth, and in that time, everything had changed. Not in the dramatic way that stories often describe, but in small, steady ways that matter the most. The sound of laughter had become more common in her home. Dinners had turned into shared moments instead of lonely routines, and each day now began not with fear of what the future might hold, but gratitude for the present that she finally allowed herself to enjoy. Nathan had become an inseparable part of their lives. It still amazed Emma sometimes how naturally he fit into their world, as if he had always been there, waiting just beyond the edge of time. He was no longer the ghost from her past, or the man she had once lost. He was simply Nathan, the man who helped Lucas with his homework in the evenings, who showed up with breakfast pastries on Sunday mornings, who learned to fix squeaky doors and burnt-out light bulbs as if he had always known the rhythms of their small apartment. Emma had built her life around self-reliance for so long that learning to accept help, to share laughter, and to lean on someone again felt strange at first, almost foreign. But with each passing week, her guard softened. She began to understand that letting someone in didn't mean weakness. Sometimes it meant healing. Lucas, too, had changed in his own quiet way. He was thriving at school, full of confidence and joy. His teachers often told Emma that he had a brightness about him, a curiosity that drew people in. When they spoke of family projects, he now spoke proudly about his mother and father, about how his dad worked at the hospital and helped people every day, and how his mom was the best teacher because she taught kids to believe in themselves. Every word of it filled Emma with a bittersweet pride. There had been a time when she feared that the absence of a father would leave a gap in her son's heart, but watching the way Lucas's eyes lit up whenever Nathan walked into the room made her realize that love, even if delayed, still had the power to complete what was missing. One evening in late April, the three of them decided to spend the afternoon at the same Riverside Park where everything had started months ago, the place where fear had once ruled her heart, but where peace had slowly replaced it. The sun was low, casting a golden glow across the water, and Lucas ran ahead, his laughter echoing through the trees as he chased a butterfly. Emma and Nathan walked behind him at an easy pace, their steps falling into a natural rhythm. For a long while, neither spoke. They didn't need to. The silence between them had become comfortable, filled with the quiet understanding that words were not always necessary to express connection. After a few minutes, Nathan broke the silence with a soft voice. "I've been thinking," he said, glancing at her with that same calm seriousness that had once drawn her to him years ago. "About us? About him? About the future?" Emma looked at him, her brows slightly raised. "That sounds like the beginning of something important," she said, trying to sound casual but feeling her pulse quicken. He smiled faintly. "Maybe it is. I know we've come a long way, and I know I can never erase the past, but I don't want to keep living as a visitor in your life, Emma. I want to be here fully, for him and for you." Her breath caught. "Nathan," he shook his head gently. "Let me finish. I've spent so many years thinking that success meant saving lives, fixing people, being the man everyone depended on. But the truth is, I was the one who needed saving. When I came back here, when I saw you again, I realized that all the things I thought I wanted, none of them meant anything without family. Without you and Lucas, my life was complete on paper but empty in every other way. I don't want to spend another day wondering what might have been. I want to build what can be." Emma's eyes softened as he spoke. His words weren't polished or rehearsed. They were raw and real, the kind that came from a man who had learned through loss and humility. She looked out at the river, the sunlight dancing on the ripples, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel fear at the idea of letting someone in again. "You've already built it," she said quietly. "Every moment you've been here, every day you've shown up for him, for us, you've been building it. Maybe the rest is just about believing it's real." Nathan smiled, a small but genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Then believe it," he said softly. As they stood there watching Lucas play by the water's edge, Emma realized how far they had come, not just as two people reconnecting after years of pain, but as human beings who had finally learned to forgive themselves. She had spent years punishing herself for the choices she made, for the silence she kept, for the years Nathan had missed. But now she could finally see that life wasn't about perfection. It was about redemption. She turned to him, her eyes glistening. "Do you ever think," she said slowly, "that maybe everything happened the way it was supposed to? Not because it was easy, but because it had to break us before it could make us whole again?" Nathan nodded. "I think about that every day." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about little things, their favorite memories, Lucas's endless imagination, the future they both wanted to build. When the sun finally dipped below the horizon and the sky turned shades of rose and gold, they sat together on a bench while Lucas collected smooth stones along the riverbank. Nathan reached for her hand tentatively, as if asking permission, and she didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined easily, naturally, like two threads that had always been meant to reconnect. That night, after Lucas was asleep, Nathan stayed for dinner. They talked about work, school, and plans for the summer, the conversation flowing as easily as the wine in their glasses. At one point, Nathan leaned back in his chair, looking around the apartment. "You know," he said with a nostalgic smile, "this place feels more like home than anywhere I've ever lived." Emma chuckled softly. "Even more than your fancy downtown apartment?" He grinned. "That place has walls. This place has life." His words lingered in her mind long after he left. Later that night, as she tucked Lucas's blanket tighter around him and looked down at his sleeping face, she thought about everything they had endured. The years of separation, the pain of the unknown, the courage it took to face the truth. She whispered softly, "We made it, baby, we really did." Over the next few months, their little family grew stronger. Nathan's presence became a constant. He and Emma found balance in ways they never could have before. They learned how to share responsibilities, how to argue without breaking, how to laugh without pretending. Lucas blossomed under the warmth of a home filled with love and understanding. Every night ended with the same ritual, the three of them sitting together on the couch, Lucas wedged between them, listening as Nathan read a bedtime story in his calm, steady voice. One evening, after a particularly long day at the hospital, Nathan arrived with something small but meaningful, a framed photograph. It was from Family Day at Lucas's school, the three of them standing side by side, smiling in a way that was completely unguarded. "I had this printed," Nathan said as he handed it to Emma, "because I want to remember the day everything finally felt right." Emma looked at the picture for a long moment, her throat tightening. "It does feel right," she whispered. "For the first time in a long time." Nathan hesitated, then added quietly, "I don't want to just visit anymore, Emma. I want to come home. For good." Her eyes widened slightly, but then she smiled through the tears that welled up. "Then come home," she said simply. And just like that, what had once been a broken story began to rewrite itself into something whole. Months later, on a warm summer evening, the three of them stood on the balcony of their new home, a small house not far from the park where their lives had crossed and recrossed so many times. Lucas was chasing fireflies with a jar in hand, his laughter echoing in the twilight. Emma leaned against the railing, her hair stirring in the breeze, and Nathan came up behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist. They stood in silence, watching their son dart through the grass, glowing insects blinking like tiny stars around him. "He's happy," Nathan said quietly. Emma smiled. "We all are." For a long time, neither of them spoke, and in that silence was the kind of peace that only comes from knowing you've survived the worst and still found a reason to love. Emma turned to him finally, her eyes warm and certain. "You know," she said, "I used to think the past was something you had to escape from, but now I see it's something you have to make peace with before you can move forward." Nathan nodded, his gaze steady. "We didn't escape it, Emma. We faced it. Together." Below them, Lucas looked up, holding his jar high, fireflies twinkling inside it like captured starlight. "Mom! Dad, look!" he shouted, his voice full of joy. "I caught them." Emma laughed softly, leaning into Nathan's chest. "He's got your determination," she said. "And your heart," Nathan replied. As the last light of day faded and the first stars appeared above them, the three of them came together once more, father, mother, and son, standing in the soft glow of a world that finally felt complete. Their story had been marked by pain, loss, and silence, but it had also become a story of courage, forgiveness, and second chances. It was proof that even after years of separation, even after broken promises and mistakes, love could still find its way home. And in that moment, with the night wind whispering through the trees and Lucas's laughter rising into the air, Emma realized that some endings are not really endings at all. They are beginnings, new, fragile, and beautiful beginnings that remind us that no matter how far we fall, there is always a way back to love, back to peace, back to life itself. And as the stars shimmered above their little house, she whispered the words that had waited 6 long years to be spoken aloud, words that belonged not just to her but to all of them. "We are home."